Welcome back to Women's Wealth, The Middle Way, the show that answers your questions about work, money, and family. My name is Susan McGlory Michael, and I am the CEO and founder of Glen Eagle, a wealth management firm in New Jersey. Our guest today is Lisa Collum, founder of Top Score Writing and a nonprofit coastal middle and high school in Florida. Lisa transformed a struggling school by taking student writing scores from 38% to 100% proficiency in just 2 years. Lisa, we are thrilled to have you here today, and we'd like to welcome you.
Oh, thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
I talked with you earlier. I was a teacher before I entered the world of finance, and I always say to everyone, once a teacher, always a teacher. And I think I brought a whole different rhythm to the world of finance because of the teaching background. So when I saw you, I just thought this is the person I want to invite to our podcast because you, I think, are going to be a wealth of knowledge to so many women that are listening today. I'd love to begin by asking you, what made you decide to go from being a teacher to an entrepreneur?
To be completely honest, I wanted to be a teacher my whole life, and that was it. The entrepreneur never even crossed my mind. I'd gotten to a point after teaching for so long and doing so well. When I went to go leave my school district, every principal I had ever worked with started saying, hey, can you just write down the stuff you used to share with the schools? Because I was helping so many schools do well. I remember laughing at first, and then they kept begging, saying, please, we really need your help. We need our students to be successful. And I just wrote down what I did in lesson plan format and put it in a binder and sold a few, not thinking much of it. And that's really how the whole entrepreneurship journey started, without me really planning it or even thinking that I wanted it. It was just out of a need for writing curriculum that principals were requesting. And so I started with a few binders and I ended up selling hundreds and starting my company. But that's how it started, not even knowing that I could ever be an entrepreneur.
And you know, I'm smiling here because I do think that the most successful entrepreneurs are those who just naturally love what they're doing and they don't even realize they're building a profitable business. But you've actually taken student writing scores from 38% to 100% in 2 years. How did you accomplish this?
I was a public school teacher. That's how my whole story started. My first job out of college was a fourth grade writing teacher. And so I was in charge of all of the writing at this school. And I happened to be at one of the lowest performing schools in my school district. It was Title I, so all the students were low income and many of them spoke a different language other than English as their first language. Most of them had some sort of learning disability, and I knew that they had to take this writing test that the school was graded on at the end of the year. And so everyone told me they're low students, they can't read on grade level, they can't write, they're not going to do that well. And me being the educator I am, didn't believe any of that and went in thinking, I got to get these kids where they need to be, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do. At the time, there wasn't a lot of choices for writing curriculum. So basically what I did, in my mind, I thought an essay is overwhelming for students. So I didn't want to go in saying, I'm going to teach you how to write an essay, because that seems like a lot. So I just broke down an essay into little pieces, and I used good old school repetition and practice, and I did that with them. And right away, they started picking up on the skills, and they were writing each paragraph. Before they knew it, they had a whole essay. I used color coding, and I did things that made writing fun. And so I was able to get them to 100% of them passing, which had never been done before, let alone at a low-performing school. And I was able to do that twice in a row. Both times I was actually investigated by the Department of Education because of that. But
Wow.
we were always cleared. And I just say I had to come up with my own way, but I think my secret was that I broke it down into pieces and really taught from structure and repetition. I think that's what anyone learns from, right? We all learn from some sort of structure and repetition and practice over and over again.
And just that whole sequencing. But listening to you, you're so impressive. But running both a business and a nonprofit school, how did you even balance earning a revenue with your educational giving back as a mission?
Basically, when I started my business, it was a side hustle. So I was still teaching full time for 4 years.
I
And I was
love your
making these,
transparency. I love it.
yeah, just be honest, because I always say if I can do this, anybody can, because this
Yeah.
really didn't start as a grand plan, but obviously turned into something huge. But I was making binders on my living room floor for 4 years at night and on the weekends while I taught full time. And so the great part about starting it on the side was I had that full time job because I had kids and I had bills. I couldn't just quit my job and start a business, but starting on the side allowed me to slowly raise money. And after about 4 years of doing the side, I was making enough where I could quit my full time teaching job and do my business. And during that time, the opportunity for a nonprofit school came up. And I remember thinking, goodness gracious, my business just took off. I have 4 kids. I do not have time for a school, but my mission has always been such a big part of me, which is just that I think all kids can be successful. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to start this school. I don't care if it's one class with 5 kids. I know it's needed in the community. And so my plan was just to have this one small class with 5 kids. And I did that and made it into a 501c3. And of course, now it's a full school. But I think the balance part of it and the way I was able to do it was because I take everything slow and low risk because like I said, I've always had bills and kids and have been able to build it at the pace that works for me and slowly with making money, be able to fund and provide for this nonprofit.
I am so impressed and in awe of you and can really relate to it because I also had, like you, 4 children. And I always say that I started at the kitchen table and my business grew as my children grew. And sometimes
Yes.
I still walk around and I say, how can this be what it is? Because it's just unbelievable that it sort of all happens. But I do think, it wasn't always pretty at times. And I remember them having to do their homework in a conference room and running out to sports fields and changing in the office.
Yep.
But we did it. And I think in their mind, they think that if it wasn't for them, the business wouldn't have been successful. And all their advice. It's amazing that you were able to run 2 organizations and raise 4 children. I think it gives other women such hope who may be going through a time of thinking, what would it be like if I transitioned from what I'm doing or I blended what I'm doing into something that I really love and have a passion or mission for?
Yeah, if you would have asked me if I could do it in the beginning, I would have said there's no way you can do this. But I'm here to say, and I love sharing my story because of this, that I think that it's the best thing you can do because the skills and life lessons my kids have experienced with me are something you can't teach. They can only learn and see from what I've done. My oldest is going to college. He's 19. And I started this when he was 5. And so
Wow.
he's been with me. They all have at some point throughout it all. But I'm able to talk to him now and he's seen, like, he understands hard work and he understands work hard, play hard, and building teams and ups and downs. And I think that's just something that I couldn't have ever taught him. He just experienced it. For me, I always say the word balance gets me because I don't think there's ever a true balance. I just think sometimes you work a lot and sometimes you don't. And it's just, there's never going to be a perfect daily balance. But like I explained to my kids, like this summer, I said, hey, like June is very busy for me, but July is when I'm going to have the time that we're going to go on vacation and do things. Or they know like the beginning of August is when I travel to a lot of schools. Now that they're older, my youngest is 9, I'm very vocal and honest with them so they understand this is real life and we have bills. And if you want to go on vacation, we've got to save for things. And I just think that it's a blessing in the end because I got to do this with them, which was an experience in itself, and they got to learn so much from it. So I honestly think it's something that more women should look at the opportunity and take advantage of it because it is something special.
And I agree with you. I agree there was never such a thing as balance, but you're so right. It's about transparency and they see the good days and sometimes when it's not so great and you're tired and a little bit of a struggle, but you're right. I think that a couple of my children have become entrepreneurs and they all were working very hard because I used to say to them, I work hard, but school is like your job too. And we all work hard, but we were a team. And sometimes I had the computer at the table with them while they were doing their homework, but we were a team. And I agree with you. I think that transparency and just being so open and honest with the kids. I used to say,
Yeah.
even as a business, we're a faith, family, firm in that order. And I remember them telling me as a woman-owned business, don't do that. And I said, no, because if the first two aren't healthy, the firm is never going to grow. And I think you're right. I think we have to just be who we are. It's hard not to be successful. And when I say successful, successes can be in many different ways. It's feeling an inner sense of accomplishment or giving back. Every time we have someone on our podcast or radio show, we always ask them what advice they would give, like even other educators who are interested in becoming an entrepreneur, or even someone who is an accountant who had maybe a passion to help inner city or whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give another person who's interested in becoming an entrepreneur or just making that change in their life?
This is actually one of my favorite questions, because I think that everyone should at least try to start their, whether you want to call it a passion business or mission business or just their business idea in some way, shape, or form. And what I say is, like, for me, when I was young, I used to think a business meant you needed hundreds of thousands of dollars and a big building and hundreds of staff members. And that's what I thought a business was. I didn't realize you could run a business out of your kitchen with one person. And I didn't realize that it doesn't matter if you make $50 a month or $10,000 a month, your business is your business. And I think that so many of us miss out on being able to fulfill that passion that we may have. And I give the example all the time of, like, if you love baking, let's say you're an accountant, but you love baking and you've always wanted to do that as a side business, or maybe even possibly a full-time business. Why not start it on the side and dedicate maybe 2 days a week and go sell your pastries, whatever you make, at the farmer's market on Sunday? And maybe you only make $100 a week or a month, but still it's your business. It's your passion. You get to do that. And so I always remind people, it doesn't have to be this full-time, huge building, big team kind of business. It can be just a simple side hustle. And I think for teachers, my number one piece of advice is just start something on the side, as small as you want, just maybe even just creating little activities that other teachers can do. Or, you know, if you like interior design, maybe once a week help people and you charge a small amount with interior design, just something that you can at least try it. Because I feel like we're all going to get to an age where we're going to say, man, what would have happened if I tried that? And it can be as small as you want. And I think they should go for it.
I can't agree with you more. It was years later when our children were older, my husband saying, I can't thank you enough, because by what I thought was small and just a kind of a startup business, paid for their tuition to a little private school in our town and our vacations. But I think I didn't realize the contribution because it didn't seem huge at the time, but then it did grow. And I think that our children benefit from that, seeing that and hearing that and realizing that it's a team. So that you can do anything you want. You just need to start somewhere and not to be afraid of it. I cannot thank you enough for joining us today, because I think it's so important, even for myself, to hear again and just be reinforced with, yes, as women, we can help other women, and we can just say, I can do this, and where do I start? And maybe start with small steps and not feel overwhelmed. It's been a wealth of knowledge. I wish you a lot of luck with your school, and also the gift you're giving back to society with improving writing for young people. What a gift as they go out into the world. Thank you for joining us today, and our guest on Women's Wealth, The Middle Way.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Women's Wealth, The Middle Way. Make sure to subscribe to us and leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast app. Join us for new episodes every other Wednesday. See you in 2 weeks.